A significant United States naval task force has arrived in the Southern Caribbean, generating immediate regional tensions and drawing a forceful response from Venezuelan leadership. The deployment includes several guided missile destroyers and support vessels operating near Venezuelan territorial waters, though American officials described the movement as part of routine regional security operations. The Trump administration has maintained that these naval maneuvers are designed to combat drug trafficking and ensure freedom of navigation in international waters. Secretary of Defense Peter Hegseth characterized the deployment as a standard demonstration of American commitment to regional security partners. This naval presence represents the largest concentration of U.S. warships in the Caribbean since military exercises were conducted earlier this year, though the current deployment appears more focused on sustained presence than temporary training operation. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro responded to the naval deployment with characteristically defiant rhetoric, declaring that foreign powers cannot invade Venezuela, while addressing a mass rally of supporters in Caracas. The Venezuelan military has been placed on heightened alert, with additional forces deployed to coastal defense positions and regular aerial patrols intensified along the coastline. Maduro specifically referenced what he called imperious threat from the north, drawing parallels to historical American intervention throughout Latin America. The Venezuelan leader emphasized his country's military readiness and strategic alliance with other nations, though he did not explicitly name Russia or China as security partners during his public address. Government-organized rallies have emerged in multiple Venezuelan cities, with participants expressing support for national sovereignty and opposition to foreign intervention. The U.S. naval deployment occurs amid ongoing political tension within Venezuela, where opposition figures continue to challenge Maduro's legitimacy despite numerous setbacks. The American government has maintained various economic sanctions against the Maduro regime, though the approach has evolved under the current administration. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has emphasized a policy of maximum pressure combined with support for democratic transition, but has notably avoided explicit calls for military intervention that characterized some previous American statements. The naval deployment appears timed to coincide with the renewed diplomatic effort through the Lima Group and Organization of American States to address the Venezuelan political crisis. Some regional analysts suggest the show of force is intended to bolster these diplomatic initiatives rather than precede direct military action. Regional reactions to the U.S. naval presence have been mixed, reflecting the complex political landscape of Latin America and the Caribbean. Colombia and Brazil, both sharing borders with Venezuela, have expressed cautious support for international efforts to address the Venezuelan crisis, but have stopped short of endorsing military options. Several Caribbean nations have called for emergency meetings of the community of Latin American and Caribbean states to discuss the escalating situations. The Venezuelan military has conducted its own naval exercise in response, though these involve considerably smaller and less advanced vessels than the American fleet now operating in the region. Military analysts note that Venezuela's armed force, while numerically significant, would be dramatically outmatched in any direct conventional engagement with American naval power. Historical context informs much of the current tension, as the United States has a long record of military intervention throughout Latin America. The Caribbean specifically has been the scene of numerous American military action, including the invasion of Grenada in 1983 and Panama in 1989. Venezuelan officials and state media have repeatedly referenced these historical events when discussing the current naval deployment, framing it as part of a pattern of American aggression against sovereign nations in the region. This historical framing resonates with certain segments of the Venezuelan population and throughout Latin America, where memories of American intervention remains politically potent. The Maduro government has skillfully leveraged these historical anxieties to bolster domestic support and international sympathy among nations critical of American foreign policy. The economic dimension of the crisis remains significant, as Venezuela continues to experience severe economic challenges despite some recent stabilization. American sanctions have impacted Venezuela's ability to export oil, though the country has increasingly turned to alternative market and trading arrangement to circumvent these restrictions. The presence of American warships near Venezuelan waters could further disrupt maritime trade and insurance costs for vessels operating in the region. Some energy analysts suggest that the naval deployment might be intended to enforce sanctions compliance more rigorously than previously accomplished. Venezuela's economic partners, including China and Russia, have called for respect of Venezuelan sovereignty and non-interference in the country's internal affairs, positioning themselves as counterweights to American influence. The situation presents particular challenges for regional organizations that have struggled to develop coherent response to the Venezuelan crisis. The Organization of American States remains divided between member states that recognize opposition leaders Juan Guaido as Venezuela's legitimate president and those continuing to engage with Maduro's government. The Caribbean community has maintained its traditional emphasis, non-interference and peaceful resolution of dispute, though member states hold varying perspectives on the Venezuelan situation based on their own economic and political relationship with Caracas. These divisions have prevented regional organizations from presenting unified positions, potentially creating space for great power competition that many Latin American and Caribbean nations would prefer to avoid. Looking forward, the immediate concern is whether the U.S. naval presence will remain in international waters or take more provocative actions such as approaching closer to Venezuelan territory or conducting exercises that Caracas might interpret as threatening. The Trump administration has shown willingness to employ military assets for diplomatic signaling, but has generally avoided direct military confrontation during its tenure. Venezuelan response will likely depend on how the situation develops, with Maduro balancing between demonstrating defiance to maintain domestic support while avoiding actions that might provide pretexts for escalation. The coming weeks will test whether this naval deployment represents a temporary show of force or the beginning of a more sustained pressure campaign against the Venezuelan government. That's all for me for today. If you like the video presentation and you would like to follow for more, hit that subscribe and like button now, and we will continue to build the show for you. Thank you to all of you guys who have subscribed. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much. I will see you soon. Bye for now.